Thank you for joining me for another day text. I'm Greg Stafford. I bring these videos through Periscope to everyone on a weekly basis, Monday through Friday, so that we can start our day off on a positive note. I'm working my way through the book of Philippians right now, but going consecutively through the books of the Bible. And so we will go to the book of Colossians next. But right now we're in Philippians chapter 3. I'm a little more casual this morning because, well, it's early, and there's some things I need to do around the house before I go to work, and it's a little colder than usual, at least for us California folks. So I'm going to get right to the day text, though, because there's an interesting point that's not often brought up in biblical texts that Paul does reference today that I think most of you will find very insightful in terms of some of the issues that we deal with in our modern day society. So from Philippians chapter 3, verses 17 through 19, that's today's text. I'm going to go ahead and read it. Paul starts out saying, brothers and sisters. I mean, as we'll find out soon, he goes on to specifically name several sisters, Christian sisters of that time and in that area. But here he's speaking directly to the brothers, but with application, of course, for all Christians to some extent, depending on their assignment. Brothers, you must become joint imitators of me. You must carefully observe those living like this, because you have us as an example. For there are many alive whom I would often name to you, but now, even as I weep, I name the enemies of the death of Christ. Their end is destruction. Their physical appetite or stomach is their God, and their glory is in their shameful behavior. Let me repeat that. Their glory is in their shameful behavior. And then the rest of the final verse of today's text states, these are those whose minds are controlled by the things upon the earth. Here we have an early reference by the Apostle Paul to mind control. People whose minds are controlled by the things upon the earth. We're very visual creatures, obviously. We were made to see and react with our environment. But evil people, wicked spirits, know this as well. And they can use the things that we are attracted to control us. And so they can use things like physical attraction, money, power, authority, all things that, to some extent, the devil also offered Jesus to the greatest extent possible, because he knew that in a physical form, Jesus would be, to some extent, susceptible to the physical things he was offering. But his mind wasn't controlled by those physical things, so the devil's temptation didn't work. Jesus' mind was controlled by the Father, not necessarily literally with the Father controlling him, but he was devoted to Jah the Father, to do only his will, not his own. So he was controlled by the things in the heavens. Today, the earth is so filled with so many things that stand in opposition to Jah. If we're not careful, we could very easily find ourselves influenced or even controlled by things upon this earth. And that's what they're using deliberately. It's not an accidental consequence of people's choices in entertainment in this world. There is a deliberate attempt to influence and even control people, from the youth to older ones, through techniques known as gaslighting, which is where you regularly suggest to someone something's not true or is true when it's just the opposite. But the power of the suggestion can manipulate a person's thinking or how they remember reality. The same thing with a lot of these actors and famous people. They all go through mind control manipulation in order to get to those positions. They're not going to be given power and authority in, for example, Hollywood or places in the entertainment world, unless they're a part of that system and under mind control. So every time you go to a movie or listen to a song, many times, those lyrics, those movies, they're visually and audibly constructed, crafted to have an effect on everybody. They're like spells. They're spell casting through these music mediums and movie mediums, and really every medium they can find, to speak lies and misinformation. And really, to what end? It's not like they're bringing people forward to a better way of life. It's not like they're freeing us from some kind of misconception that's holding us down, but that once we realize the truth, or once we're under mind control and their truth, we'll be okay. That's not what's happening to them. Everything they appear to be involved with, whether it's abusive sex, drugs, or self-glorification, leads to destruction. And that's why Paul says at the beginning of verse 19, their end is destruction. You often hear me say, with regard to certain practices, that they're taking those people straight to death. The things that some people today promote as life lead them straight to death. They're not passing go. They're not collecting anything. They're going straight to jail. Just like in the Monopoly game. So, but this is real life. This is no game. We can use those things analogously sometimes to make a point, but it really is a serious matter. You should be very careful about yourself, about your children, and what they watch and what they listen to. It's very difficult, especially in U.S. society, and you almost have to tolerate some exposure, and you want to be careful how you deal with your children or others as well that you're trying to help, because if you restrict them too much, you might end up hurting when you're thinking you're helping. So it's not an easy thing to do to help people understand what's going on in this world, because we exist in the world and we live in part because of the world. So, but those of us who have studied and we have knowledge of history and of Jah and of the things Jesus did and taught, we can see through most of what's happening. But even then, it's still very difficult if we're not on our guard. So when I read through today's text and I saw that part on mind control, I thought that's something we really need to hear and remember today, because the second we leave this broadcast, or we're not doing something related to Jah, Jesus, or the things that they promote and teach, we're more than likely going to be involved with something that is going to try to influence us away into some type of shameful behavior. And in this world, to many people, acting shamefully, or like that show, it was even called Jackass, acting like a jackass, right? A donkey. But really, a jackass is someone who makes a fool of themselves. They're promoting that. They had a whole movie, or series I should say, I think a movie as well, on being a jackass. And they do a lot of similar things where it concerns really humiliating yourself and others for no real reason other than for so-called entertainment. In any case, I can entertain myself a lot better than through humiliation rituals. So that's today's text. I'm going to go ahead and post that here while we're all together. And I'll go ahead and put that up on Facebook and Twitter. Someone mentioned to me, and I knew this was the case, but I hadn't changed the setting. The Facebook page for the Christian Witnesses of Jah, it had been set to where you couldn't find it in the United States. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, and that is because there was a time over the past few years, and even now I have to watch it, where people, non-Christians, anti-Christians, were making trouble for me. People who didn't like my Christian activity were actually getting me in trouble, trying to get me fired from jobs, trying to get me into difficulty with other people. So because I have to be careful of who I work with and whom I work with and whom I'm around, for a while I was limiting the exposure to some of the things I was doing so that I didn't so that I could deal with the things in an orderly manner without being unaware of who was seeing some of the things I was doing and not appreciating them, and in fact opposing them. So I hid the C.W. Jow Facebook page in the U.S. from searches, because I was working with people who at the time were using things like Twitter and Facebook against me to try to tell non-Christians that, hey, this guy over here is promoting Christianity. And then, I could see them moving and acting, and some of the things that I and other Christians have had to deal with are amazing, I'm sure. But those are some of the challenges that we face. So I've unblocked that, though. I'm not in a position anymore where I'm around those types of people to the extent that I am as concerned as I was several years ago. So I try to be tactful and do the things I think are best in order to get the message out, while also, looking out for my family and trying to survive in this world. So I encourage you to do the same. Use prudence, be wise. We never want to hide the truth, but we do need to be cautious as serpents and innocent as doves, so that we make good decisions that will lead to a long life now and in the future. Okay, so I've posted today's text. Feel free to refer to it throughout the day. Don't forget that part on mind control. That's a big deal. Something we're facing now on an everyday basis, I would say, because of things like TV, radio, internet, and even signs, billboards. We're very visual creatures, and we can be influenced if we're not careful and guard ourselves. So if these day texts will help you, if these videos will help you, rewatch them, share them, refer to them, and above all else, praise Jah.